we have to stop making it so easy on them. You know, it's really just a matter of where do we begin. Maybe we begin at Boston Children's Hospital.
Boston Children's Hospital says its staff is being threatened and harassed now after far-right activists on social media posted misinformation. The hospital, though, now is working with law enforcement to try to better protect its staff in the face of these lies.
So they don't care about protecting kids. They're endangering children. If they have people who are now calling into these hospitals and threatening to execute doctors, if doctors are suddenly becoming afraid to go into their place of work and help kids, if it is disrupting general care, including care of cis children as well, that is fucked. That is like, you are the bad guys in this story. Just, there's no other way to see this. So, I have been covering a story for the last couple days and tweeting about it, about how the Libs of TikTok account on Twitter, as well as Matt Walsh, have been targeting the Boston Children's Hospital with lies. They are lying about what is taking place in the hospital and making multiple posts about it, saying that children, people who are under 18, are getting regularly hysterectomies. And this was fact-checked by PolitiFact to be untrue. The Boston Hospital had to release a statement yesterday about the number of death threats that they have been receiving and how their medical staff are receiving death threats personally. And I wanted to explain a little bit about a word you may have heard, stochastic terrorism. So let's explain it. The idea behind stochastic terrorism. A leader or organization uses rhetoric in the mass media against a group of people. This rhetoric, while hostile or hateful, doesn't explicitly tell someone to carry out an act of violence against the group, but a person feeling threatened is motivated to do so as a result. That individual act, political violence, can't be predicted as such, but that violence will happen is much more probable thanks to the rhetoric. This rhetoric is thus called stochastic terrorism because of the way it incites random violence. If you want a direct example of this, for a long time, Ben Shapiro had a video called The Myth of the Radical Muslim Minority, where he wanted to make everyone incredibly afraid of Muslims, saying that there's a very small amount of Muslims who aren't actually radical, who aren't going to commit acts of violence, and that all of you need to be incredibly afraid about this. And then there was a shooting in a mosque in Quebec. When the shooter was apprehended, they looked at the list of his top sources, and Ben Shapiro was one of them. Now, you can't say that Ben Shapiro caused him to do that act. You can't say that Ben Shapiro directly told him to do that act. But this is where the idea of stochastic terrorism comes in. If you are going to inflame people through lies, Alex Jones, another really good example, Alex Jones telling people that the Sandy Hook parents didn't actually have dead children who were murdered in a horrible event, that they were crisis actors. That leads to a bunch of people getting really mad and calling up those grieving parents and telling them that their kids aren't actually dead, which is, of course, the number one thing a grieving parent wants to hear. And that led to one of the parents eventually committing suicide. Now, did Alex Jones directly say, I want you to harass those parents? No. Did Alex Jones directly say, hey, I want all of you to call those parents every single day and tell them that their kids aren't actually dead? No. He doesn't have to. He can just put out these lies, broadcast them on a regular basis, and get people angry and afraid enough to take action into their own hands. And that leads us to this. Far-right extremists are threatening to execute doctors at a children's hospital. When do you know you're the baddies? You know? These people who spend all day complaining about how they care about the welfare of children. Won't someone think of the children? Fucking nonstop. Matt Walsh, obsessed with trans kids' genitals. Absolutely obsessed. The doctors working at a children's hospital are getting death threats. People are calling for their execution. That's fucked. It's hard enough to be giving healthcare to kids on a regular basis. You will have to deal with death. You'll have to deal with kids who have very severe third-degree burns. You're going to have to deal with kids who have leukemia. You're going to have to deal with a non-stop onslaught of things that would depress anybody. And now, in addition to that, you get confused people calling and trying to say that you need to be executed. The viral Twitter account Libs of TikTok promoted a lie about gender-affirming care at the hospital, and now doctors are getting death threats. Boston Children's Hospital said on Tuesday that its staff has faced a flood of violent threats and harassment sparked by a false claim made by the viral Libs of TikTok Twitter account. The account, run by Brooklyn real estate agent Haya Reichik, tweeted on August 11th that Boston's Children's Hospital is now offering gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls. The claim has been widely debunked by fact-checking groups, But, as is typical in anti-trans rhetoric, facts rarely matter, and the claims were shared widely on right-wing social media accounts. As a result, the hospital and staff have faced a torrent of abuse. In response to commentary last week critical of our gender multi-speciality service program, Boston Children's Hospital has been the target of a large volume of hostile internet activity, phone calls, and harassing emails, including threats of violence towards our clinicians and staff. The hospital released in a Twitter post. The hospital did not specify where the threats were coming from, but Vice News has uncovered some violent threats posted on far-right and extremist platforms targeting the doctors. Long past time to start executing these, quote, doctors, a member of a pro-Trump message board formerly known as The Donald wrote under a copy of a video featuring a doctor from the hospital. This message board is the same one whose members last week doxed and made violent threats against the judge who signed the search warrant that allowed the FBI to search the home of former President Donald Trump. The forum's members encouraged one another to post negative remarks on the hospital's YouTube videos, which were ultimately removed as a result of the influx of comments. Another member posted the phone number of the hospital and encouraged others to call them on the phone. There were similar reactions to the claims in far-right and conspiracy-minded Telegram groups. Demons like this do not deserve to breathe. Crimes against humanity equals death, one Telegram user wrote under a link to one of the articles repeating the false claims. These people are psychopaths and should be locked up. On both platforms, the doctors and hospital staff were referred to as pedophiles and groomers. Wow. What a surprise. What a surprise. Consistently saying that, hey, anything LGBTQ plus or even supporting LGBTQ plus makes it grooming or pedophilia, and this happens to pop up. Attacks have become a mainstay in Republican orthodoxy in recent months. RightChick's account, which has over 1 million followers, has been at the forefront of the right's anti-LGBTQ campaign, which has also targeted schools and libraries in recent months. It's the same tactic that has been deployed for years by anti-abortion groups and is still being used in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning of Roe v. Wade. Twitter did not immediately respond to Vice News' request for comment on whether RightChick's latest tweet broke its rules. The claim was instantly picked up and amplified by a slew of right-wing influencers and media personalities. This is monstrous, Stephen Miller, former Trump administration official, tweeted in response to RightChick. How does anyone involved in this still have a medical license? Others who boosted the false claim included the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh and conservative websites such as the Post Millennial, the Gateway Pundit, and the Daily Caller. We are deeply concerned by these attacks on our clinicians and staff fueled by misinformation and a lack of understanding and respect for our transgender community, the hospital said. The article and the online attention that followed was based on incorrect statements that the Boston Children's Hospital performs hysterectomies on minors in connection with transgender care. As has been pointed out in several fact checks about the claims, in order for hysterectomy to be performed as part of gender-affirming care, Boston's Children's Hospital requires a patient to be capable of consenting for themselves. Boston's Children does not and will not perform hysterectomy as part of gender-affirming care on a patient under the age of 18. Despite the outrage that targeted harassment campaigns against Boston Children's Hospital and staff, RightChick on Tuesday posted a similar incendiary tweet targeting Phoenix Children's Hospital. Now she's going after Phoenix Children's Hospital. Buckle up, I guess. She also posted a statement saying that she had evidence that they were performing hysterectomies. This was on her, I believe, Patreon. Evidence that they're performing hysterectomies on children, which, again, citation needed. I think Alejandra Caraballo was the one who revealed that. Oh, yeah, here. How many more children's hospitals and the providers need to be threatened before you actually do something? Alejandra Caraballo, a clinical instructor at the Harvard Law School Cyber Law Clinic and LGBTQ plus advocate, who has been at the forefront of calling out RightChick's campaign, tweeted on Tuesday. Now, there's this.
Today on the Matt Walsh Show, children's hospitals around the country are butchering, mutilating, and sterilizing their young patients. So according to Boston Children's Hospital, literally every toddler who has ever been born or will ever be born is trans. Now, if it seems like they're casting the widest imaginable net in order to catch the most children they can and put them all on a path to sterilization and butchery before they can even talk, well, that's because that's exactly what these monsters are doing.
So again, I don't know if you could even start to count the amount of lies that have already been said in the first sentence, but he can say whatever he wants. He can just go on his show and lie through his teeth. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all.
And they've done it up until this moment without much resistance from the public. But that has to end. We have to stop making it so easy on them. And that's why I'm in the very early stages of trying to organize a national coordinated effort to fight back against this evil. You know, it's really just a matter of where do we begin. Maybe we begin at Boston Children's Hospital.
Boston Children's Hospital says its staff is being threatened and harassed now after far-right activists on social media posted misinformation, claiming they perform gender-affirming hysterectomy procedures on young girls. The hospital says it's not true. They do not perform those procedures for anyone under the age of 18. Boston Children's Hospital says it is proud, though, to be home to the first pediatric and adolescent transgender health program in the United States. The hospital, though, now is working with law enforcement to try to better protect its staff in the face of these lies.
So they don't care about protecting kids. They're endangering children. If they have people who are now calling into these hospitals and threatening to execute doctors, if doctors are suddenly becoming afraid to go into their place of work and help kids, if it is disrupting general care, including care of cis children as well, that is fucked. That is like, you are the bad guys in this story. Just, there's no other way to see this. I'd also like to add, because, data, science, facts are important. Researchers completed the first large longitudinal study on trans children this year. They found only 97.5% of trans kids continue to identify as trans. Those that desisted did so for various reasons, including the violence faced as trans people. 97.5%. Okay? So every single time someone's like, well, what about the detransitioners? What about the ones who regret it? What about all the problems that these children could potentially face? You aren't advocating for kids or child welfare or the betterment of kids' lives. You are actively using scientific information to, again, promote bigotry. You hate trans people. They don't care about kids. They just hate trans people. That's all it is. That's all there is to it.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demmel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earthhuman, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tao, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.